In this unit, we'll be talking about different aspects of writing, beginning with organizing your argument. Then we'll look at how you connect paragraphs, particularly using topic sentences. Then connecting sentences and the importance of different types of citation styles. And then in the final video in this unit, we'll look at plagiarism, which is an important concern for any academic. Now, when you think of writing, as an undergraduate, you may have written a lot of things that were like, we did this, for instance, in a lab report, or they did that if you're writing a term paper. But when you get to higher level academic writing, it's not just a narrative. It's not just, we did this. All true academic writing is an argument.
Yes, it's true. All academic argument is important in scientific writing. And in fact, recently we have some new framework called autobiographical narrative inquiry. What this means is we collect data not from somebody else's, but from our own story. So again, we use our own story as data for argument.
So even though it's a narrative, it's a narrative inquiry, which means that it's not just a narrative of what you did, but you choose what to include based on whether it supports your final argument. So what is an argument? An argument is claim and support. In any argument, you make a claim, and then you support it with evidence and with reasoning. So we talked in Unit 5 about different organizational strategies, basic strategies that are used in academic writing, particularly IMRD in science and social science, and IPTC in engineering. And we said that in science, usually those terms, introduction, method, results, discussion, IMRD, are found as section titles. There may be some other section titles as well, for instance, literature review or framework or pedagogical implications, but those four are almost always present. However, in engineering, you have a different set. You always have introduction and conclusion, but then in between that, the section titles are based on the topic of the research. They still follow the same basic order, however, that you talk about the process, the details of the method that you use for your new design, and testing, how you tested that design against other current designs. And so, again, all academic writing is structured as an argument, and it can be thought of as an argument within an argument within an argument. So the overall claim of a paper, any paper, is that this paper contributes to the field in some way. And that claim is usually made basically in the introduction. And then in the method section, you give a description of how you did your work. The data are presented in the results. That's your evidence. And then the interpretation, the discussion, the conclusion, that ties together the reasoning, why you believe that this makes a contribution to your field and how it adds to your field. So within that sort of overall structure, each of the main sections or divisions has a purpose. In IMRD, the purpose of the introduction is to make the claim that you have identified an important unanswered question. Then in the method, you show that you have gathered your data in a valid and reliable way. In the results, you show that you have good data. And then in the discussion, that you have a good explanation for that data. The implicit claims in an engineering article are similar. In the introduction, you claim that you have an important unresolved problem. And then in the process, that you have designed a workable solution for that problem. And then in the testing and the conclusion, you show that your solution is better in some way than the existing solutions. And then again, within those, you have different components, different component claims that are found in almost all research articles. And again, we mentioned this in Unit 5, in Unit 5D. But you have, beginning with the motivation, you show that the research is important. to someone for some purpose, that it has not been done. There's either a gap in the research, or the research, the proposed solutions have some sort of a limitation. And then you state your research goal and the foundation, the framework on which you're basing your research. And those can come in different order. Sometimes the framework is before, sometimes it's after the research goal, depending on the field. And then you have the research details, the methods that you used. And you show that the research was done carefully, following existing methods, accepted procedures. The testing procedures were also done carefully in a reliable way, so that your data are reliable. Then you show the data and you present it in a way that shows a useful pattern in some way. It's not just raw data, but you shape it so that people can see that it points to a conclusion. And then you make comparisons, either with other work or within the work, and often interpretations. You show that the data can be explained in a reasonable way. And then your conclusion is, yes, we have actually done this work and we make a contribution to the field. So for each component, there is evidence. Each of these components makes essentially a claim. And there's evidence, and the evidence can come either from past work, citations of past work which has already been accepted by the research community, or new evidence that you present in this paper. So again, the old evidence from past work, you have to give citations. The new evidence in this work can either be description of your work or graphics that describe the data and the patterns in the data. And then the reasoning can be, again, of two forms. Deductive reasoning shows that your data in some way support or challenge a particular hypothesis and prediction. Whereas inductive reasoning draws from different sources and makes a generalization based on all of that various data. So in general, the first part of the paper, the introduction, relies on citations, evidence from past work. And then the latter part of the paper relies on present data. Again, either descriptions or graphics that show the data and the interpretations that you draw from that.
Now we are going to use one example that I co-authored with Huihuan Zhang and Elaine Terone, published in Language Learning in 2009 as an example, to show that we are doing what we preached.
Right, so you begin with an introduction that shows your motivation for doing this work.
This article is a study of different pronunciations of the TH sound in English. I think, I think, I think, I think, I think. So in order to talk about what factors account for the variation of all these different alternatives, I have to talk about speech community, followed by variation studies. And of course, certain words are very frequent. That's why it's more conducive for correct pronunciation. And then we also talk about which sound is easier than others. That's the so-called markedness. And finally, we can show that there's a development over time as one acquires a second language or even the first language. There is a time sequence too. So by reviewing all of these important literature, I can lead to my research and begin to raise research questions.
So for each of those, you show this has been done, but this has not yet. And that leads to your research to fill that gap.
Exactly.
So again, the argument structure varies in different genres. We've been talking about academic papers, journal articles, which usually follow IMRD or IPTC. They're very linear. Similarly, in a presentation, an oral presentation, usually people choose to follow that same linear order because we're familiar with it as academics. We expect things to come in that order. And it's a logical order that makes sense to present your argument. On the other hand, a wiki has a very different structure because it's a webbed structure that interconnects things in a different way. So in an iGEM wiki in particular, you have the standard pages, the pages that the judges look at to see have you fulfilled the criteria for each medal, for each award. In those pages, what you should do is make a claim that we have met this criteria. And then from that page, link to the other pages that support your claims. The link in this case serves the same purpose as a citation or a note in the text pointing to a graphic. And the data pages then provide the support for that claim. And one page may support multiple claims, just like one article might be cited several times in different places in your article. And so by using this structure, you avoid a lot of repetition. And so again, we'll look at that more in the next video.